The day's other headlines start in western Texas, where health officials say an ongoing measles outbreak has now infected nearly 200 people. The extremely contagious virus has also spread to even more parts of the U.S. The CDC says it's confirmed cases in 12 different states. The vast majority of those infected have been under the age of 18 and people who are unvaccinated. At least one person has died, and authorities are looking into a second measles-related death. However, the CDC says the risk of a broader measles outbreak remains low. The Trump administration is canceling $400 million worth of grants and contracts for Columbia University. In announcing the move, officials cited what they described as Columbia's failure to stop anti-Semitism on campus. The Ivy League school was at the forefront of student protests last spring over the war in Gaza. In a statement, Education Secretary Linda McMahon said to receive federal funds, quote, universities must comply with all federal anti-discrimination laws, adding that Columbia has abandoned that obligation to Jewish students. Columbia has vowed to work with the government, saying it is fully committed to combating anti-Semitism. Russia launched dozens of missiles and drones toward Ukraine overnight in the first major attack since the U.S. paused intelligence sharing with Ukrainian officials. In Kharkiv, emergency crews cleaned up after a strike that targeted energy facilities and other infrastructure. At least 10 people were injured across the country. On social media today, President Trump said he is, quote, strongly considering putting sanctions and tariffs on Russia and urged both Russia and Ukraine to get to the table right now before it is too late. But later, speaking to reporters in the Oval Office, Mr. Trump said he's actually finding it easier to deal with Russia than Ukraine.
We're doing very well with Russia, but right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine.
U.S. and Ukrainian officials are expected to meet in Saudi Arabia next week to discuss peace talks. In France, trains are starting to roll at Paris's busiest train station once again after the discovery of an unexploded World War II-era bomb halted rail travel. Police released this photo of the device, which contains more than 400 pounds of explosive material. Workers stumbled upon it overnight while working near tracks north of the station. As crews worked to defuse the bomb, passengers for high-speed and commuter services were stranded for hours. Officials say it's not uncommon to come across vestiges of the war, though this one was bigger than most.
Finding bombs around the railway network is something that happens. But in a proportion like the one today, with a bomb of this size, it's really quite exceptional.
Bomb disposal officials said the device was British-made. It is the fourth one they found in the Paris region since 2019. Back here in the U.S., officials in New Mexico say that actor Gene Hackman died of heart disease and showed severe signs of Alzheimer's. In a press conference today, authorities said the 95-year-old passed away a full week after his wife, who died from hantavirus. The bodies of Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, were discovered last month in their Santa Fe home. Hackman won 2 Oscars during his storied film career and was honored at last Sunday's Academy Awards ceremony. The nation's largest Army installation officially returned to its former name today, Fort Bragg.
Count the brave, count the true, good walk to victory.
The new sign was unveiled to the tune of the Army song. This time, the name Bragg honors Army Private First Class Roland Bragg, a World War II paratrooper. The base had originally been named for Confederate General Braxton Bragg. So ends the short time that the base was called Fort Liberty after a push to remove all references of the Confederacy from military installations and other public spaces. The mission of a lunar lander that touched down sideways yesterday has come to an early end. Athena sent this picture just before the spacecraft went silent today and ended up in a crater more than 800 feet from its planned landing site near the moon's south pole. This was the second attempt by the Texas-based company Intuitive Machines to land on the moon. Last year, its lander Odysseus also ended up on its side. The company has contracts with NASA for 2 more deliveries, but says it needs to figure out what went wrong before launching another mission. On Wall Street today, stocks clawed back some ground after a rough week for the markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added more than 200 points, or about 0.5%. The Nasdaq rose more than 120 points. The S&P 500 also ended higher today, but overall suffered its worst week since September. And Dolly Parton has paid tribute to her late husband of nearly 60 years, fittingly enough through song.
Your willingness beyond compare. No, I wouldn't be here if you hadn't been there.
The music legend released If You Hadn't Been There earlier today. Parton met Carl Dean outside of a laundromat the day she moved to Nashville at the age of 18. They married 2 years later. As Parton rose to superstardom, Dean avoided the spotlight. He died on Monday at the age of 82. On social media today, Dolly Parton made clear that he has always been her inspiration, writing, "Like all great love stories, they never end. They live on in memory and song. He will always be the star of my story." Still to come on the NewsHour, Jonathan Capehart and Ramesh Ponnuru weigh in on the week's political headlines. And a look at the influence of black musicians in the history of punk music.
This is the PBS NewsHour from the David M. Rubenstein Studio at WETA in Washington, and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.